Oh, it's time. We're here for WoLang Wednesday. Welcome, world language teachers. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Devin, and I am the teacher author behind La Libre Language Learning or La Libre Language Learning, depending on what side of the French or Spanish tree that you fall on. Now, if you are new around these parts, we hang out here every Wednesday to have a chill chat about, right now, we're in a spring series all about curriculum. And today, jump on in, because if you are a level 3 teacher, I have a really great class plan for you. And you can also find all of these classes in replay format on my page here. And my replay friends, thanks so much for watching in the future. We can't wait to hear from you. And if you're joining in live, hello, nice to see you. Put in the comments, what are you teaching this week? Is it any of the things, if you're a level 3 teacher, is it any of the things that we're going to be talking about in this class? I'll give you a quick list. Passé composé versus imparfait for French teachers, or the dreaded subjunctivo or subjunctif for all of, depending on what, of course, side you fall on for French or Spanish. And we're also going to be talking about por versus para for my Spanish teachers. And I know that for all of my other languages out there, that you have something similar around the past tense that you probably teach at level 3 that we're going to talk about today around how do we handle this. And also tell me, if you were invited to this class via my newsletter, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Did you bring your tutu? Did you? I hope you did, because we're about to get into it. All right, y'all, let's jump into this class. We're going to get into some good stuff today, and I'm so glad that you are here. Let's get started. Okay, so it looks like everything's working well, and I'm going to share my screen so that y'all can see what I see. And let's start presenting. Do you like my flowers? I got some fresh flowers for you today, so you'd have something nicer to look at than my dried flowers. I love my dried flowers, but you know, it's the same old thing every day. I got these from the farmer's market this weekend, and they were only $16, and they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. So I thought they needed to make it into the shop, because if you know me, you know I'm obsessed with flowers. I'm just going to check on here and make sure that everything is working correctly and that I can see y'all as well. Can you tell me too in the comments below if you can see everything and if you can hear everything? That would help me out a lot. But in the meantime, let's get started. Welcome to WoLang Wednesday. We are on clase número 5. I know. If this is your first class, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And if this is class number 5 for you, then we're just going to keep this party rolling. We're on curriculum level 3 today. So we're talking to level 3 teachers about what might be going on in your curriculum and where the common pitfalls are and what we could do instead. Okay, so let's see this here, make sure it's working. Ooh, running a little slow today, are you, telefono? That's okay. We're just going to keep rolling here then. Hi. If you're new around these parts, let me reintroduce myself. I am Devin, as we said before, and I was a French and Spanish teacher in the public high schools of South Carolina, in the area where I live, in Charleston. Now, though, I have a new role of creating curriculum full-time. I love it. I absolutely love it. It means that I get to do things like this, hanging out with you and working with teachers. I do consultations with curriculum. I create materials on Teachers Pay Teachers. And my dream, which is very close to coming true, get ready for July, is to have a full level 1 curriculum. So right now I'm working on that library and it's almost done. It'll be ready in July. And I also help teachers create their own curriculum too, because if you are like me, where you have been in several different teaching situations, or even if you've been at the same school for 20 plus years, you know that world language teachers, we often are, I like to say the phrase a lot, accidental curriculum experts, because we have to work with a lot of interesting situations, hodgepodge resources that we got to put together in some sort of weird crafty like situation. And we're pretty good at it, but we were never really meant to be experts at creating curriculum. We have so many other wheels that are spinning above our heads in a million different directions. So I love to help teachers make sure that they know and they have the tools to create high quality curriculum that helps to further their program goals, and they can do it on their own or with the help of a department if they need to, especially because that's a huge focus of world language classrooms, is making sure that curriculum's up to date and high quality. And we do this every Wednesday. So you can follow that link in order to get to the full schedule for all the classes. I'm pretty sure it's going to come up here again. Yeah. So let's make this a thing. Come hang out with me next Wednesday, same time, same place, different flowers for our next class. I'm so excited for our next class. It's just for French teachers. So Frenchies, we're going to hang out. On se voit plus tard. All right, so before we get started, let's make sure that we are setting our action plan. And I'm like dying to talk to y'all and make sure that this works here, but this is being a little funky. Not you. You guys are wonderful, but this is not opening up correctly. But that's okay. We'll make it work. Let's see if I can get it to open up. But make sure that before we get started that you set your intention and your action plan. You are spending valuable time with me on a Wednesday afternoon. And if you are anywhere near my neck of the woods, it's beautiful outside. So I really appreciate the fact that you are here with me today. And I want to make sure that you get the absolute most value for your time. So before we get started with the meat and potatoes of what we're doing today, what are you hoping to get out of this class? Because you hit join for a reason. You hit play or watch for a reason. There's something about your curriculum in your level 3 class, or you saw my newsletter and you were intrigued by the idea of like, what are these elephants in the room? You'll see what I mean in a second. And you know that there's something that you need to fix or that you would like to work on to serve your level 3 students better. But you can only pick one thing. You only have time to truly implement maybe 1 or 2 ideas that you'll hear today. So I'm going to ask you again at the end of class, what is that one thing going to be? If you're doing it this week, because you should take action, the sooner you take action, the better. So what is that one thing going to be? Keep that in the back of your mind. And let's get started with our ideas. Where do you want your 3s to be by the time June hits, by the time they're outies and they are ready to go home for the summer? Where do you want them to be? That's my question for you. And then I'm going to try and see if I can close out of this so that I can read comments. Try again. Okay. So where do you want your 3s to be in June? What is your goal for them? Do you want them to hit a certain level of proficiency? Do you maybe want them to have a certain understanding or perspective of the world? Where do you want them to be in June? Tell me in the comments here. Level of oh, there we go. Here it is. Don't mind the noise. All right, good. So tell me in the comments below, where do you want your 3s to be by the time June rolls around? Hi, y'all. Now, here's the real question underneath that. Does your time in your level 3 class and the focus of your class every single day, is it really reflecting those same goals? Your focus in a level 3 class should be to move your students from novice mid, if that's where they're starting at the beginning of the year, to novice high, and then from novice high to maybe intermediate low, and then reaching into intermediate mid. That is the average student goal, you know, whatever that means, for your level 3 students. Now, you know as well as I do that levels are really tricky this year. So that's just a suggestion. But that is where the average student is around the whole level 3 high school or middle school benchmark that we are working with, in at least from the American perspective. And for your levels this year, it's just going to be all over the place anyways, but we're going to talk about a way that you can help to get around that as well. Before we go any further too, here's a way that you can check and see if maybe your focus in class is truly reflecting your goals. Go to this beautiful little URL that you see here, which is lalibrelanguagelearning.com/check. And you're going to see this really cool PDF. It's quick, 2 pages, but it's a checklist for a nice little gut check of where exactly your students are based on novice high goals in all 4 modes of proficiency and some intercultural communication skills as well. So you're looking there to see in a quick, at a glance format, are my students where they need to be? Where do they need more practice? Where are they okay? And where can we push the envelope a little bit? Okay, so put in the comments tutu if you know what all this is all about. If you know what the elephants wearing tutus is all about. But I think that misstep number 1 for level 3 teachers and curriculums, because it's not really, it doesn't really have that much to do with the teacher, but it's the curriculums that we all experience, that I experienced when I was a high school French 3 student. The classic overuse of the whole this or that, pinning all of these different grammar and time tenses against each other. So for French teachers, and I'm just going to go with what I'm familiar with, and of course we have other languages represented here, but represented here. But we have passé composé versus imparfait. That was always something that we did in level 3. Even, and I remember sitting in my high school desk learning this as a 9th grader, being like, what is going on right now? Like, I just learned this tense of imparfait. And for French, like the imparfait is certainly not, it's not impossible, but it's kind of hard. And passé composé is definitely like a for an English speaker. It's a hot mess. But passé composé versus imparfait is a huge focus of level 3. I remember it being a huge focus as a student, and I know it still is for teachers. And then you have, of course, the introduction of the subjunctive. And then as soon as you teach the subjunctive, you have, okay, so we have the subjunctive versus the present tense. Can you identify when you use the present tense and when you use the subjunctive? And then the next thing that we move on to is for my fellow Spanish teachers too, is this was a little bit less of a blow for me because I was learning this in college and I was already familiar with the absolute shock that happens once this really starts to come around in a world language classroom, if you're in a romantic language, is the preterito, imperfecto, that whole thing, which is the exact same thing as passé composé imparfait. Whoa, I can tell you that starting in French and then going to Spanish, whoa, it's way harder and it's way different. It's way harder, way different. Even though it's the same concept. Oh my God, like that should just be a whole course. That should just really be a whole course. And then for Spanish teachers, we have this special thing with por versus para. And I don't know about you and about your school district, but everywhere that I taught in South Carolina, this was taught in level 3. And I think it's pretty common that this is something that's approached in level 3. And it's always done in this way. You teach por expressions, you teach para expressions, and then you ask students to identify when you use what. And I see it as really the giant elephant in the room. Like that's where this whole metaphor comes from, is that these three things that we pit against each other in like these super smackdown grammar matches of tenses, is they are a huge elephant in the room of every world language classroom, of every world language meeting, is how much emphasis are we going to put on this? How are we going to properly assess this? Am I using this correctly in my classroom? Am I able to actually demonstrate this well to my students if I'm a non-native speaker? And past that, should I do this in the target language or not? That's another huge question that comes up with like level 3, level 4 teachers. So when you're looking at these giant concepts, every time that I was ever spending time with level 3 or level 4 teachers, it's this question of different ways to approach these ideas, but they're always present of how much, how to assess, and then, of course, how much emphasis needs to be placed on it. So this, I think, is misstep number one, is that this is overemphasized just in general in the world language community, is the idea that our students need to know this. They need to know this at level 3, and that they also need to master it at level 3. And I will also argue today that what is the big misstep here is not in teaching them or introducing students to these, because world language based on second language acquisition does not at all argue for the sheltering of grammar. It does, though, based on second language acquisition principles, talk about the difference between understanding the linguistic functions of different morphemes in a sentence, like all these are morpheme features, and when they're acquired in a student's language acquisition journey. So the order certainly matters for when you teach these things as to when they're actually going to line up. And asking students to be able to tell the difference between when you should use a subjunctive phrase and when you should use a present tense phrase in a kind of sticky situation is definitely overemphasized as an essential skill. And we're going to go over why with a specific study that I'm going to show you at the end of class here, is that this is really, really overemphasized. It's something that dominates the conversation in world language when it really shouldn't. These are all tools in your student's toolkit that is going to help them further up the language ladder when it comes to being able to use more complex phrases. However, none of these are useful if they haven't mastered the levels at the bottom of the rung. It's something that really gets overused in level 3. And here's why. Because what happens very often in level 3 classrooms is that we're not assessing at all or accurately, and like formal or informal doesn't really matter, but we're not assessing very accurately our students' current proficiency levels. And I would argue that like in the year of COVID, this is not nearly as important. Like you have way bigger fish to fry. But the reason I put this course in here now is because you're probably in the stage, if you were like when I was still in the classroom, we used to shape our curriculums during the late spring before the summertime, because the summertime was when changes, adaptations, new materials came in. So we would always work on our curriculum during the spring. And that was also when most of the year, the rest of the year was pretty much set out. Like I think we got in my school district where my son goes, we've got about 8 weeks left of the year, right? So we're kind of in wrap up mode. And this is a good time to look critically at your curriculum and prepare for the work ahead next year. Next year is going to be a very unique challenge because we're going to have students at all different kinds of levels, having all different kinds of experiences in their learning before they come to you, especially in level 3, because you have those 2 years beforehand where like, God knows what they were doing, right? God knows what they were doing. So this is more important than ever. Don't worry about it right now. Do not do this right now. You have way bigger fish to fry, like appreciating yourself for Teacher Appreciation Week coming up next week. But for next year, as you're planning out what you're going to be doing next year, put in a place where you can assess a current proficiency level, at least informally. And here are some ways that you can do that. I gave you a link where you could go to the gut check at lalibrelanguagelearning.com/check. And as your students are coming into the room every day, you could do a quick check of each of those skills and see where everybody is at. They're written in formats along the lines of, I can tell you my opinion in a complete sentence about a familiar topic. That's a novice high skill, right? That's a foundational novice high skill. So if your students are at novice high, they should be able to do that for almost all familiar everyday topics, especially if there's cognates, gestures, visuals involved, all that good stuff. If they can't do that, you know that that's something that needs to be worked on. And they're probably not at novice high. They might be novice mid, maybe even novice low. You know, it happens. Okay, so let's do it right now. Let's see. If you are a level 3 teacher, we're going to use this is going to be our elephant. Okay, so we're going to take our elephant here, and I would like us to see if you can guess what proficiency level this writing standard is. This is from the actual proficiency standards from 2012. I literally took a screenshot of this, and we're going to compare it to another one here and see if we can figure out which levels they are at. Okay, now this one of these I would say is the appropriate level 3 standard for writing, and one of these is probably what a lot of teachers reach for, but might not be in that framework. So let's go through it together and see where we're at. Hello, friends. Thanks for watching. All right, so let's do this together. Writers at the blankety blank sub-level are able to meet basic work and or academic writing needs. They demonstrate the ability to narrate and describe in major timeframes with some control of aspect. I honestly don't really know what aspect means, but we're just going to roll with it. If you know what it means, put it in the comments because I don't. They are able to compose simple summaries on familiar topics. Blank writers, and that's the level here, are able to combine and link sentences into text of paragraph length and structure. Their writing, while adequate to satisfy the criteria of the advanced level, may not be substantive. Writers at the blank sub-level demonstrate the ability to incorporate a limited number of cohesive devices and may resort to some redundancy and awkward repetition. They rely on patterns of oral discourse and the writing style of their first language. These writers demonstrate minimal control of common structures and vocabulary associated with the blankety blank level. Their writing is understood by natives not accustomed to the writing of non-natives, so sympathetic speakers, although some additional effort may be required in the reading of the text. So when attempting to perform functions at the blank level, writing deteriorates significantly. So that's the ceiling. That's the ceiling. If you've ever taken an OPI, that's the ceiling that they're at if they start to deteriorate significantly. Okay, so put in the comments what level you think elephant is at. And we're not going to worry too much about sub levels. Just see if you can get close. What level do you think this is? We've got in here ability to narrate and describe in major timeframes, some control, summaries, adequate but not substantive, limited number of cohesive devices, so like and, or, but, maybe, may resort to some redundancy, minimal control of common structures and vocabulary associated with this level, and it's understood by natives, but it requires a little bit of sympathetic listener or reader vibes. And when attempting to perform functions at blank, their writing will deteriorate significantly. So put in the comments below which one you think this one is. Elephant. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, and this is the link where you can get all of these here, is the proficiency guidelines, because I stole this. I literally took a screenshot of this, and there's the copyright there, right there. Okay, so now here's the boxing gloves, because we keep putting a lot of these grammar tenses fighting against each other. So this one is the boxing gloves. We got the elephant and the boxing glove. For our boxing glove, this is the second level that commonly gets associated with level 3. So let's see if this one's a pro or not. Writers at the blank sublevel are able to meet a number of practical writing needs. They can write short, simple communications, compositions, and requests for information in loosely connected texts about personal preferences, daily routines, common events, and other personal topics. Their writing is framed in present time, but may contain references to other time frames. The writing style closely resembles oral discourse, meaning that it doesn't have the fluidity of text structure. It sounds a lot like spoken word. Writers at the blankety blank sublevel show evidence of control of basic sentence structure and verb forms. Pretty much all of them. This writing is best defined as a collection of discrete sentences, as in they all kind of function individually, and questions loosely strung together. Love that. There's little evidence of deliberate organization. Blankety blank writers can be understood readily by natives used to the writing of non-native speakers. Sympathetic. When blankety blank writers attempt level writing tasks at the level above them, the quality declines and the message may be unclear. So the common features that we have of this, and tell me what you think the boxing glove level is. Where do you think this is at? Where do you think this is at? If you're watching this from the replay, put in your answers too before we get to this, because I'm excited to see what you think. For these writers, they're very practical. It's very much in the style of their written speech. It's framed in present tense, but contains references to other time frames. They have evidence of control of basic sentence structure and verb forms. Evidence of control, meaning not consistently, but it's there. And it's defined as a collection of discrete sentences loosely strung together, as in individually, they're all there, but it's not really cohesive. Not a ton of organization, and can be understood by native speakers as long as they're a sympathetic reader or listener. Are you ready to find out? All right. So the first one that we saw is advanced low. The elephant is advanced low. And the main characteristic of advanced low writers is that they are able to tell a full paragraph story, full of people in the back, paragraph story, comfortably in multiple time frames. Intermediate low or mid writers, because I bet you that if your students are, if you have some students who are reaching in that reaching category, you can get some students who are intermediate mid, maybe at level 3, at the end of level 3, who might reach to some of these. You have the main characteristic of these writers is that they are occasional use of a past tense structure successfully. So let's go back into the most commonly taught things in the level 3 classroom. Besides the crazy fun units that usually get taught in level 3, which is of course around the most common grammar concepts that are around there, that would be like when I was young or childhood fun, going on a trip gets used a lot. If I were a millionaire, I would do this, so that you can use like the conditional and you know, past and perfect and all that kind of stuff. And then por versus para comes with its own little joys and specialties. These are the main concepts that really get hit hard in level 3 classrooms, really get hit hard. And then they get further emphasized and built upon in level 4. So here's my question then, is that if the main characteristic of intermediate low is occasional use of a past tense, then why does our curriculum look like we're working with advanced low learners? Because I remember being one of the top students in my French class and still being really lost on a lot of those concepts and still having a hard time with them well into French major, because it's an advanced low skill and you have to be advanced low when you graduate your major. So I have a question for you. What do we do now? Because you might already know this. You might have already felt this in your gut when these things happen. I don't know about you, but the moment really hit me that something was up with the amount of high-level grammar that's usually taught in level 3 classrooms. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-grammar, but this really hit me when I was teaching Spanish in a department. Many Spanish 3 teachers had a meeting in order to go over the por versus para quiz, compare their answers, several of them together, and see what answers did you get, what answers did you get, what answers did you get, so that they could come up with a correct answer key. And they invited me to the meeting so that I could also contribute to, like, what do you think the right answers would be for this, for por versus para? And I asked out loud, well, if there's going to be some disagreement even amongst the teachers, why do we think the students are going to be able to do that? So here's where I think that we should be moving if our goal, which it is according to ACTFL and the way that our country and really all of world language is moving, is away from grammar-based teaching, which of course, again, grammar's not bad. Grammar's just part of the toolkit. But if you look at all of the things that were mentioned in the characteristics of the next level, it doesn't talk about past tense timeframes that often. It actually talks more about writing style. It talks more about defined control in the present tense and being able to get across ideas using different things. And then, of course, that it's mostly in the present time frame at intermediate. This one is specifically intermediate mid, but it may contain references to other time frames. So it seems to me that we're spending a great deal of time on this stuff when our time might be better spent working on other grammar features, especially re-emphasizing a lot of those present tense concepts that we gloss over in levels 1 and 2. So I want to present this idea to you and see if it sticks a little bit better, because I know as well as you do that this is not going to change overnight. This was the way that I was taught in French 3, and it's still the way that a lot of French 3 classrooms are run. So this is something that's going to change slowly over time, but I hope that this class helps to make this easier for you personally to make some shifts and some changes that's really going to make some positive impact in your classroom. What do we do now? And to be 100, I stole this from my pre-K son's report card. So this is language that early elementary teachers have been using for a while. I think it's genius though. What if instead of mastery, we focus on emerging skills? Because everything that is taught in level 3 are very valuable, high punch skills. Like they seriously pack a punch. That's what I mean by that. Learning the passé composé and being able to use it with fluidity is awesome and important, but it also isn't probably something where your French 3 students need to know the ins and outs of absolutely everything. Because I can tell you that for a very long time, I got away with not being able to do all of the things that you're supposed to be able to do, like putting the extra E's and the extra S's to mark for gender and number agreement for a long time as a French major, because it doesn't come up as often as you think. That comes up like 1% of the time. But I remember spending a whole year of French 4 doing those types of things and working on those types of exercises. Meanwhile, being in college thinking, I wish I could understand my French professor better when she spoke. I really wish I could do that. So having that emerging mastery means that you recognize when it is said in speech, and you can see it when it's in a text, and you can maybe start to integrate it a little bit into your writing. But consistent mastery is the idea that you are able to do it consistently. You see it, you identify it, and you're able to tell the difference between when one should be used and one should not be used, which is usually what we do and how we test mastery. Let's take that away. Emerging mastery means that we are, table. We're going to make happy elephants out of these, and we're going to put tutus on them and making them dancing elephants instead of fighting elephants in the room. What if we taught students to recognize these very powerful phrases, especially because they're at the beginnings of stories? They're able to tell you about what they did yesterday with all of those. What if we taught them to recognize them, what most of them look like, and then give them a ton of input so that the language codes itself in the way that SLA tends to do? What if instead we use the most high frequency examples and forgot a lot of we need to teach every option that's out there when it comes to variations, especially in preterito? Like there are some phrases when I was living abroad and speaking Spanish every day, there were versions of the preterite that I didn't even use ever, nor did I hear in speech ever, but that were a very large focus of my Spanish minor. So like basically minor. And it didn't really make sense to me. What about teaching and expressions? Because I'll tell you that those are the things that helped the most. Functional chunks. Those helped the most. Like those are the things that I went back to again and again and again when I was in speaking situations, and they help a lot, especially with your students. And what if we stopped testing for full mastery whenever possible? So what do I mean by that? You know, those quizzes that are very common where you have exercises where students are given two different options and they have to circle like which one would match. Is it going to be the imparfait form of that verb, or is it going to be the passé composé form of that verb based on whatever situation they're in? That's kind of a full mastery task. What if instead they had to read that paragraph and answer comprehension questions where there's passé composé and imparfait scattered throughout it, and they have to answer what time frame things are happening based on what they're reading? Because then that's emerging mastery instead of full mastery. Another thought for you is that one of the things that I'm known for in my trade is Sassy SLA. And these are moments where I like to bring out some fun just to remind teachers of where we're at and what we're doing. So Sassy SLA fact. The reason I love second language acquisition is because I dove deep into it when I was still doing my master's. So when I was still pursuing a master's, in a master's level course for intermediate high to advanced mid Spanish teachers, and one of the teachers was even advanced high, we were in a class called oral proficiency for Spanish. And our professor did full stop in the middle of the exercises that we were working on to get towards our oral proficiency and make it better. And merci, Anne. And he stopped in the middle of the lesson and asked us, of course, in Spanish, like, would you like to dive further into this? Because I'm hearing a lot of issues between preterite versus imperfect, por versus para, and past subjunctive. There's a lot of inconsistencies in y'all's speech. And I mean, to be fair, like I was an intermediate high Spanish speaker, still am, and there were advanced low, mostly advanced low, because that's what you have to be a Spanish teacher. And then we had some advanced mid and some advanced highs, but in that whole group, everybody said, yes, please give us a refresher. We were all having issues with knowing when to use what. And if you, as an advanced low speaker, because I know you are, since you teach either Spanish or French, or if you're like me and the district was like, it's cool. Like, as long as you pass this test, you're fine. You can be intermediate high. Then you know that this is something that even teachers who are not native speakers, my native speakers, y'all are special. You don't have to worry about this. But for us, non-native speakers, this is something that we struggle with still at advanced low. And that's common. That's where we should be. It is a common feature of advanced low to have emerging mastery, to borrow the term, emerging mastery of past tense structures and being able to use them interchangeably in a longer text or a story. That's the main feature of advanced low learners. So if our goal in level 3 is to make sure that our students are moving from, what's the level again? Oh, yeah. Novice high, where most of them are coming from. Hopefully, cross your fingers, in Spanish too. I mean, if you're lucky, they're novice high. Then if they've had enough input, right, then novice high, then maybe you can push them to intermediate low. And that's not really present in intermediate low is at all any kind of mastery of interchangeable past tense structures. Here's my other Sassy SLA fun fact. It's not really that sassy, but it's fun. Sassy SLA fact. And I have a link for you to go with this too, that I think you're going to love. Okay, so these two bad boys right here, you're going to love these. Okay, I just got these recently into my bookshelf arsenal. Move my Minions iced coffee so you can see it. Okay, so this is a high frequency French dictionary. And I'll give you the link so that you can pick this up for yourself if you would like to. I got this for $30, 34 maybe, 30, 34. For my diehard French teachers, if you are working on curriculum and you are starting from scratch, this is a phenomenal resource. Phenomenal, phenomenal. And some of the things that I want to show you in here that I think you're really going to love is that it gives you in here, and I'm going to show you the same thing with the Spanish one, is a frequency index that shows you how often the word is used in spoken and written speech from all Francophone countries in order. And this one has, oh my gosh, so many. So many. But from this series of dictionaries, there's 13 of them. You can get it in Arabic, you can get it in Chinese, you can get it in all the things. But the one that I'm going to tell you about, this SLA fun fact, sassy one, is from this one specifically, this high frequency dictionary of Spanish. And if you are one of my friends and customers who has my high frequency word wall, this is where I got all of the word wall terms from, because it's a high frequency. So these are from like the first 150 terms is what's on your wall now. Lucky you. These magnificent works of literature, and this one's about the same price, $30, that I got on Amazon. But if you can, if you are able to, check and see if an independent bookstore or used bookstore near you has it, because supporting your local community is dope. I couldn't find one in my area. But in a 20 million word study of subtitles, written media, and some spoken word in this one here for 21 Spanish speaking countries, the verbs used were 52% in the present tense, half of them. 16% were either preterite or imperfect, not one or the other, either preterite or imperfect. So 8% each. And then only 4% of the verbs used were in subjunctive. And I would venture to say that French was probably about the same. I don't know specifically what the French one was, but this one I had handy because I had it from a handout from a workshop I went to with Bryce Hedstrom. I don't know, feels like a century ago, but I think it was 3 years ago, where he introduced me to these books and said, you need to go get these. So 3 years later, I did, when I actually had the time to. But this is fascinating to me, because that is not at all how our time breaks down in a classroom, right? That's not at all how it goes down. 52% in present tense. Man, I wish I had 52% experience in present tense when it came to my classroom and my input that I received. And 60% preterite or imperfect. I wish I had known that earlier. I would have taught a lot less in the preterite and a lot less of the imperfect. And I would have hit hard those present tenses, making sure that the umbrella was wide and that my students had a lot of input in those areas. The high frequency dictionaries too, I'm going to put those links in the comments below. And I think they're already in there too for the discussion. And full disclosure, those are affiliate links, meaning that I get a little cha-ching my way if you choose to use those for Amazon. And that helps to support this channel. Woo-hoo. But of course, if you can, see if you can find it in a local bookstore near you, because that's way better. They're kind of a specific item. So Amazon might be your best bet for that. But if you can, see if you can find it at a local bookstore. Also, if you only need to check for one or two things, I forgot the main reason I wanted to show y'all these is because the cool things about these lists, and the reason that I got them, is because I'm working on my own curriculum right now, and I want to make sure that all of the curriculum units that I use are only focusing on the most high frequency things. So, for example, I'll show you this one. This is perfect because we're right on the Let's Get Practical section. So for La Familia, this high frequency dictionary will show you what the most frequently used terms are for family in your target language. And again, you can get it for Persian, you can get it for Arabic, you can get it for Chinese, Russian. There's 13 of them. I don't know exactly what all the specifics are, but I did get them for French and Spanish. And this is going to be so helpful to you, because I don't know about you, but I never in a million years would have thought that tío, esposa, and tía were like really high up there on the frequency, and that novio and primo were also really high up there in frequency as well. But that, well, you can probably guess that, but cuñada and nuera and yerno and suegro, which are things that are used pretty often in family units, I would say, or I shouldn't say that, but I know they were in my family unit. Me imposing my experience on you. They were definitely in my family unit, but I wish that I had this book earlier, because I can look and see here that these, we go from 140 in the frequency list to 9,926 on the frequency list for cuñada, for sister-in-law. So you might not need as many words in your unit as you think you do. And it can be hard to figure out which ones are actually going to be the ones that you can trim out. So I'm using this book to make sure that my units are really, really tight in terms of only using the vocabulary that is the most frequent. And you can use them too to see if the types of tenses that you are using are the most frequently used in real native speaker speech. This is going to be really helpful to you if you choose to go down this route, and I can help you with this as well. If you just need like a quick, like, what does this unit look like? You can just shoot me an email. But for looking at your curriculum, I want you to get into the habit of thinking high frequency. Oh, I should mention this to you too, is that Wiktionary, I think it's Wiktionary.com, but look up Wiktionary, Wiktionary will give you a lot of these terms for free. It's like the first 500. So you can use those too. That when you're looking at like passé composé terms and imparfait, because I'm asking you to use the most high frequency terms, and you might be saying, well, like, what are those? Those tools te ayudará mucho. Now, let's get practical. Now that we've got these books, we've got some ideas of where to go, and we have some ideas of what the missteps really are. Let's see how we can make this happen. Maybe either this week, you're going to change and tweak a little bit your assessments, or maybe for next year, you're going to be moving in this direction. One, look at your curriculum. Where can you trim some fat and switch from mastery to emerging use? This was something I used to do all the time in my Spanish 2 classes when we weren't really at the point where we were ready to take things out of the curriculum. There were some things that you know as well as I do that it's just not a good battle to fight, right? Like that now just might not be the time, okay? You might know that it's not quite best practice, but it just might not be the right time, right? Many rivers to cross, it's okay. So here's what you do. Instead, you lessen the emphasis and go from mastery to emerging. So you maybe, if it's a full week unit, you instead say, let's just do it in a day and we'll do a quick speaking quiz on it and we'll move on. It's fine. Number 2, this is something I used to do a lot too, especially when ser versus estar was still a part of my Spanish 1 curriculum. And I was like, I read some research. I don't know. I don't like that. So can you switch to identify rather than use and choose? So very often when we're trying to see if our students are actually on the level of mastery of a certain concept, we're trying to get them to use that thing correctly in speech, or maybe choose between 2 correct forms, or even sometimes incorrect forms. Don't do that. Like incorrect forms, oof. No. We can talk later about that research. That's not a good thing. But instead of use or choose, go to maybe identify. And then you can definitely argue if you're in a departmental situation or a district, whatever situation where you don't have the room to make the changes right now, but you want to de-emphasize something, that can really help you. That helps things to be practical because we're all in different situations. We're all also in different seasons of life. You might not be looking to revamp your curriculum right now. You're just looking to make it 1 or 2 degrees more towards the path of proficiency. And that is amazing progress. And that should be celebrated, especially with what you've been dealing with this year. Any little bit is awesome. So point of the story being, your new level mantra is this: make your elephants happy. Put tutus on them. Don't make them battle against each other. Don't make students, as much as you can, choose between things like preterito versus imperfecto, the whole subjuntivo y presente. Maybe, if you can, whenever you can, your new level 3 mantra is this: emerging instead of mastery. The pre-K teachers know that this is the way to go. Emerging instead of mastery. First, you get celebrated for your emerging ability to use something, and then you go into mastery. You'll make your elephants real happy. Now, we're at the end here, y'all. We're at the end. Put in the comments, can you remove something? Maybe this week, or maybe as you're creeping up on final exams, or if you are working on your curriculum for next year and making some tweaks. Can you remove anything that's not working towards intermediate, low to mid goals this week? If you can't remove it, what's something that you can change? Tell me in here what's something that you can change. Oh, good. This complements the Delphi and DLE prep. Good. I am so glad to hear that. And pare that language down. Yeah, and that's exactly it. Pare the language down. That's what we're all about. Another thing to do too, to remember, is that with paring language down is teaching things in phrases. That was my favorite way to get around things, is that you can still, and we do it all the time, we do it really well as language teachers naturally, is teaching things in functional chunks and phrases as part of a vocabulary so that they're still getting all that rich exposure to grammar that they need in order to move up the ladder, but that understanding the features of language, being able to describe the features and then choose those features correctly when they have options, isn't the focus of class. It can be manipulating those features when they need to in their speech. That's really where we want to get to. And expecting them to do that when they're barely intermediates with various past tense, very complex structures is an unfair expectation at level 3. So our time is better used elsewhere. That's the concluding thought for you. Do you remember your mantra? Before I tell you what's next, do you remember? Emerging instead of mastery. All right, so let's get after it. What's next? I've got some things for you. Download the Wolang Wednesday class schedule so you can see what's coming up next. And did you see down there, French teachers, what we got coming? I'm so excited. We're going to be working on our curriculum maps for French 1. Oh, I love French 1. I love it. I love it. Chateau. So we're going to be working with French 1 curriculum maps, and don't worry, Spanish 1 is coming up. So if you want to see when it is, Spanish teachers, go to lalibrelanguagelelearning.com/Wednesday to get all the goods. Now, if you've been around these parts for a little bit, then you know, because I talk about it a lot, I want everybody to have access to this if possible, even if you're outside of South Carolina, because it's useful for everybody, is that I was part of a team of 80 really talented teachers from K through 12. It was a government project 2 years ago in 2019 to make a curriculum map for all levels of all languages from K through 12. So you can get a Chinese 1 through 5 curriculum map with sample lessons and units, all completely for free, if you go to lalibrelanguagelelearning.com/SC, and it'll take you right to the South Carolina Ed website where you can find those and download them. They're really cool. They're by a lot of talented teachers. I only worked on a tiny part of it. I worked on French 1 because I love French 1, but you can get a lot of good stuff in there that can maybe help you to shape your curriculum, get some ideas on where to go, and also what a good curriculum map really looks like, because that is beautiful. Okay, and number 3, this is the last thing that I want you to keep in mind, is that you have tools readily available to you on my website. I have so many articles that I just released last week on curriculum design, because that's my focus right now. So you can go get all the articles on curriculum design if you just go to that main URL, lalibrelanguagelelearning.com. But if you go specifically to lalibrelanguagelelearning.com/check, you'll be prompted to enter your email so you can join my newsletter. And then you'll also get a free download to the gut check. It's 2 pages and you can use it to check off and see exactly where your students are. It's based off of the novice high skills in all 4 modes. And you can check to see really quickly in teacher-friendly language, how are they doing? How are they doing? This also, prepare your hearts for Teacher Appreciation Week because you want to be on my newsletter for that. I have so much fun stuff planned for Teacher Appreciation Week because y'all are heroes this year. You really are. I'm not in the classroom anymore, so I know just a tiny piece of what your life has been like this year because I was in it for 3 months with you last year. But you deserve a lot of love. So I'm going to be showering you with love all next week. So make sure you get on my newsletter so that you can be a part of all those sweet, sweet giveaways. I mean, what? I didn't reveal any secrets. So make sure that you get on that list so that you can be a part of it. And y'all, that's our class for today. What'd you think? Did you like it? Was it helpful to you? Oh no, sorry, flowers. Stay happy, Snappy. That's my happy Snapdragon right there. You probably have one in your backyard, I bet. There's a lot of them right now. So, friends, come and join me next week. Les amis de français. If you teach French, we're going to be working on our curriculum maps next week. If you're a level 3 teacher, it's obviously why you're here. See if there's something that you can tweak about your curriculum to make sure that you're working towards intermediate, low to mid skills. And your new mantra is emerging over mastery. Thank you so much for being here this week, and I will see y'all same time, same place. Bye.